I'm panicking. No! Yes! I don't know. Harvard. I'll be knocking at your gates soon. My final year in high school starts tomorrow. Leave suburbs and parents and my little brother. Become the best doctor in genetics ever. Veritas. OMG. A real professor will be my tutor in biochemistry. Professor Evans. He made his PhD in clinical laboratory genetics. My extra credits are being taken care of on the very first day. I am master of the universe. Professor Evans is the most intelligent person I've ever met. He talks so wisely about biochemistry, I get goosebumps. I'm so lucky. He's tall, skinny, with graying hair. He speaks with an amusing, deep, and calm tone, which makes his voice distinguished. He must have been very handsome in his youth. And he's always walking in his funny, old-fashioned brown jacket with leather elbow patches. Tomorrow, he's going to show me his lab. Only he and his assistant, Spike, are granted access. I'm to be the third. I need to stop talking to my smartwatch because people start looking at me like I'm a freak. Today, Professor introduced me to the lab. It's located in the old Air Force facility building next to the airfield, not far from school. It was built in 1942 and abandoned in the early 60s. In the 80s, shortly after the power plant was built on the dam, the facility was adapted as the school's auxiliary buildings. The laboratory is divided into 3 parts. The large Section A, where we keep the rats, Section B for our lab tables and the decontamination chamber, leading to Section C, where Professor and Spike make all the experiments. The East Wing is sealed off, so no one's been there in decades. Spike is a really cool and diligent guy, but he seems a bit weird. He's a bit hunched and limping. He told me he had cerebral palsy due to premature birth. I'm sure his life must not have been easy. In chemistry class, I was assigned with a new girl, Megan Wells, an instant queen bee with a British accent. We were to create the simple antiseptic compound potassium alum. Megan had a simple task: prepare a potassium hydroxide solution we will dissolve an aluminum foil in. I've no idea where she came up with the idea to bring potassium superoxide from. And of course, no, she didn't use a test tube, but a flask and 10 times a bigger dose. Boom! Rapid reaction and a lot of broken glass on the floor. I called her a schmuck. I was that pissed. KOH versus KO2. How dumb can you be to make such an elementary mistake? I'd prefer to work with a chimpanzee. Professor Evans is so smart, so well organized, a great professional. He keeps his research always documented in his red journal that he carries all the time with him. I was always wondering why such a great scientist teaches chemistry in a high school. Spike told me Professor Evans was falsely maligned by his lab colleague and sacked by the university's board as a result. I asked Professor why he's not fighting to clear his name. He didn't want to talk about this. Spike told me the powerful people pulling the strings stand behind this, and there isn't anything we can do. This is so unfair. I'm feeling like a monster right now for overreacting yesterday. Megan came and apologized for the accident and asked if I could be her chemistry proxy. She was so straightforward, I said yes. She's been living in the UK for 15 years as her father garrisoned in the military base over there. Coming back to the US, she's struggling with adjusting herself. A lot of things were new to her and she needs to catch up a lot. I think people are giving her a hard time because of her Cockney accent, too. Anyway, she is quite smart, especially good in English, what a surprise, and math. Unfortunately, the first impression she gives can be a bit confusing. Cheerleading squad, provoking outfits, and cocky behavior gathers not my kind of company around her whatsoever. Today, Professor told me what the purpose is for holding all the rats I've been feeding for the past 2 weeks. They are the test subjects in research of preparing a stasis stimulant. It's a mix of malaria invoking bacteriophage and a mixture of genetically suppressed staphylococcus bacteria causing controlled meningitis symptoms. This cocktail causes a deep sleep and hibernation to prevent trauma victims from rapid blood loss or acute diseases. It's absolutely fascinating. We could save so many lives. I'm so happy being a part of it. Ugh, English was so boring today. Fortunately, my neighbor, Logan, kept accosting me. I wasn't able to concentrate anyway. We were chatting for the whole lesson. He told me he was homeschooled, so he had a really hard time adjusting during his first year. But a year ago, he substituted quarterback Johnny Unitas in the championship semifinals and actually won the lost game. He's been the school's idol ever since. Suddenly, Miss Keating saw us talking together, so she asked Logan about Whitman's poetry that the class was discussing. He was frightened and didn't know anything and was about to be given another F. Suddenly, I got an idea, and I said it was my fault as I was telling him my extended notes. Logan was shocked, Miss Keating was shocked, but I think I was the most confused among all of us. Anyway, the F was overruled. A moment ago, while we were watching TV, Massville was mentioned in the main news, but it wasn't about the power plant like always. Not this time. Today, it was about an unusual incident. It seemed to be an ordinary road accident. A man wearing dark clothes walking at night on the right side of a road was hit by an SUV. The driver called 911 and ran to the nearby gas station for help. But by the time the police and ambulance arrived, the victim was gone. Considering the vast car damage and the blood on the hood, it seems very unusual he got away by himself. Unless he's Edward Cullen or Superman. The police have been searching the area all night, but found nothing. So far, no one has been reported missing. SCI, Massville, Season 1, Episode 1. Logan sent me a link to a fascinating documentary about a species of a fungus pathogenic to insects. In this case, about Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. The fungus targets a specific ant species as its host. Its spores attach to the ant. Using mechanical pressure and enzymes, it eventually breaks through the exoskeleton and affects the host's hemocoel to manipulate its behavioral patterns. The ant eventually finds a leaf and locks itself to its vein with an excessive mandible grip, so-called the grip of death. It stays in this position up to 10 days, while the fungus grows in its exoskeleton and slowly kills its host. 10 days of being a zombie? Nature, you are fascinating. Creepy, but fascinating. Professor and Spike told me we might have a breakthrough. Pixie, one of our rats, was successfully recovering from a week-long coma after receiving our stimulant. He was only a bit sluggish, but he's still fighting the infection. In the Journal of International Neurobiology, I've stumbled upon a cool article written by Professor Cohen, who described an interesting disease. Kuru, called the laughing sickness, it's similar to Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, mad cow's disease, and was transmitted among primitive tribes by funerary cannibalism. The infectious agent was prion, known as PRP, prion protein, a misfolded protein without nucleic acids but capable of forcing healthy proteins to misfold. The professor wrote these prions were discovered by a side effect of his research on rats' brains at Stanford University regarding stasis stimulant, just like ours. Due to a high risk, research results were sent to some government facility and never picked by a civil agency again. Huh, what a surprise. People eating corpses got infected, and it's untreatable? Well played, vegetarians. Well played. At the lab, I've noticed Spike had his hand bandaged. He seemed nervous and avoided me the whole time. He just went to Section C to Professor Evans. When they came out, Spike seemed really pale. I think he had a fever, so I offered to fill in today if he's not feeling well. Professor told me Spike had a nasty cut, and maybe it's for the best he went home. Professor Evans called me in the morning asking if I could replace Spike for some more time, as he's having a high fever and staying home sick. I said yes, but I really hope it won't take long. I've tried to call Spike all afternoon, but he didn't answer the phone. I'm guessing he must be really sick and sleeping all day. I told Professor Evans about Professor Cohen's article I read the other day, and he shouted at me. Professor Cohen appeared to be the same lunatic and fabricator who caused him to leave Harvard. He wanted to claim credit for the research for himself. Professor Evans said the prion theory is a pure fiction, as proteins without DNA or RNA can't replicate. I told him in science we need to keep an open mind. In return, he shouted at me again and told me I can forget the extra credits if I'm to lever the fundamentals of genetics. Today, I overslept and missed my bus, but I called Megan, who rides a car with her boyfriend, to give me a ride. She's dating Biff Tanner. He's 6'7" or 6'8", 250 plus pounds, an ogre look-alike. He's the offensive tackle playing with Logan on the team. He doesn't talk much, and he's definitely not my type of a guy. Beauty and the Beast. But who's the real beast, huh? Today, it was the third day in a row I was feeding the rats and preparing the observation data alone. Besides, the rats were behaving really strange, like they didn't know me. Jerry, a spotted older male, used to jump all over the cage knowing it's feeding time, but today he was hiding in the corner of his cage and didn't touch any of the food while I was nearby. We had a lot of fun and laughs today on a sort of double date. We went out for a dinner to Danny's, and Megan was fed up of the guys talking about football tactics all day. So she pointed out it should be called soccer, especially since its origins lay in Great Britain, just like rugby's. No matter if I agree with her case, that was not the greatest idea. People around us heard her and joined in the argument. Megan was the loudest, and she pissed almost everybody off. I was sorry for poor Biff. He was torn between football and Megan. But oh boy, she was so ferocious. It was a pure pleasure watching her fighting her corner. Fortunately, the owner got pissed too and threw everyone out. In the morning, I went to Professor Evans' house to tell him I need a break and he needs to find me a substitute as I'm already exhausted and behind with the lab notes. He wasn't home, his back door was locked, but the padlock to his cellar wasn't. I went in and found a couple of old jars with some rat specimens and formaldehyde. On an old table, I found a dissected rat. I was pretty sure it was Jerry. and I could swear the body was still moving, but it was probably due to rigor mortis, and his muscles must have still been contracting. At school, Professor Evans told me Jerry died, and he took his body from the lab for the autopsy. And he forgot to mention it to me, as it was always Spike who's been there for him. He also said Spike got really sick and his mother will take him back home to Griffin City. I thought she was living somewhere in New Mexico. Anyway, I got stuck with the squeaky rodents. Just great. Today was one of the strangest days in my life. We were in the Paradox Cinema watching The Toxic Avenger, a B-class movie. Pretty cool, though. It was raining while we were coming back. We'd taken a shortcut near the old airfield. Under the control tower, just behind the fence, Logan noticed a naked male body covered in blood and mud. His skin was covered with open, dark wounds, sort of a late-phase necrosis. His head was crushed, which made identifying the victim difficult, if not impossible. Supposedly, he must have jumped from the tower, breaking his bones and crushing his skull. Logan didn't say a single word the whole time. He got white as a sheet and kept puking nearby. Men these days. I called 911, and later we were giving evidence at the precinct to Dad's friend, Sheriff Matthews. SCI Massville, Season 1, Episode 2. Logan's been behaving really strange today. He spilled his juice in the canteen and kept stuttering when I asked him to bring back my chemistry notes. I hope he's not still in shock after seeing that body yesterday. While walking to the lab, I noticed the area near the tower was still off limits, being investigated by the county's law forces. Staying till late in the lab can be creepy sometimes. Today I had a feeling there were some disturbing noises coming from the sealed east wing. It sounded like long scratches, some metallic bumps, and wild howls. It stopped after some time. I'm guessing it was just the wind singing in the old rusty pipes. Anyway, it gave me goosebumps. Today, Professor left his journal open on his desk. I gave in to temptation and peeked at his notes. The rat he dissected had some black marks all over its body, some brain changes causing it to sustain higher pain levels. It's like his cognitive functions were off, leaving only basic homeostasis on. It had enlarged genitals too, leading to the conclusion that its growth had to be premature. I'm guessing the tests are not going as planned. I think today everyone was deliberately trying to piss me off. When I was leaving in the morning, Mom said I should think about my future and learn more. Less dating, more books, blah, blah, blah. OMG. Who is she to judge me? She's a soccer mom watching Dr. Phil all day. I'm a straight A student. My extra points are being taken care of already. I even frequently help at home. And all I get are claims? Ugh, I am pissed. At school, Logan asked me why I haven't been answering his calls yesterday. He was angry with me too, but what was I supposed to tell him? Spike is out, the lab is on my plate, I need to study, but I'm exhausted. But today, Mickey brought me a sandwich and said he likes my hair, which is nice. At the lab, Professor was very angry today. He said he found Pixie dead and Monty, his cage companion, too. He needs to perform the autopsy first before revealing any further details. The dosage of immunostimulants must have been too high for such a small animal. Does this mean we're back to square one? Having a 12 years younger brother is not easy, but can have its pros. Today, Mickey came by and brought his iPad and showed me a funny game. Run like hell. Cool graphics and challenging difficulty. I'll download this too and show it to Logan tomorrow. It's incredible how kids these days get fluent with technology. Sheriff Matthews came to school today. He told us they identified the victim we found. Based on DNA compared with the car accident victim, it was the same person. Old Rufus, local crazy homeless guy wandering around the county. He was busted a few times for trespassing or stealing some food. Sheriff said that after being hit by the car, he must have had a head trauma. He probably ran away and committed suicide soon after. About the black wounds, there were rat-transmitted bacteria and rabies found in his system. Rabies, if untreated, is fatal. Poor guy. He probably wasn't able to handle the pain, so he jumped from the tower. I've seen him a couple times sleeping near the school. I can't sleep. I think I'm panicking again. Spike suddenly leaving town. Missing accident victim happened to be suicidal crazy old Rufus. Is something wrong happening in Massville? I need to know, but I'm not sure I want to find out. I didn't go to school today. I was at old Rufus's funeral instead. I had the feeling that I owe him that. It was snowing. The ceremony was short. There was just a priest, the sheriff, and the guy who hit him. And me, standing aside. He was put into a cheap pine coffin. No flowers, no speech. Just from ashes to ashes. And after 2 hours, he was in the steel urn standing in a community crypt. I hope you liked my roses. Rest in peace. I needed to check for myself. I've just called Professor Cohen. In spite of what Professor Evans told me about him, he didn't seem to be a lunatic at all. He was very substantive instead. He told me he had some notes on the results. Prion influence on the brain can't be discredited. It causes the infected to literally lose his mind. He told me I should keep away from Professor Evans, as he's blinded by his overweening ambition and will take no step back in achieving his goals. He said, I quote, "He's a cold-blooded son of a bitch with a messiah syndrome, whose derangement will sink everyone around." Does the professor have anything to do with the accidents in Massville? I went running, but it doesn't help. I'm tired, but still can't sleep. I need to go to the lab. I need to know. Is it just a coincidence our rat became a cannibal? Or that the missing found old Rufus eventually ended with similar unusual black wounds? Was he fighting rabies, or maybe something else? I'm losing it. Or am I? I went to Section C. There are a lot of things wrong with the rats. Some of them are having such vast open wounds that they should suffer enormous pain, but they were calm, like they were waiting. Others were devouring the carcasses of their cage mates, and the others, when they saw or smelled me, started to fiercely butt their cages. The view was so terrifying, I couldn't stay there. I couldn't wait. The urge of knowing was stronger. Oh my God, I found Professor's red journal. He writes about the research. Rat 5, deceased. Rat 17, deceased. Rat 27, Rat 42, double immunosuppressants, brain changes, necrosis wounds, aggressive, organ changes. Wait, Object 1, captured, deprived, moans, lost, deceased. What the hell? Rats don't moan, they squeak. Object 2, bitten by a rat 33, extremely accelerated symptoms, hand wound exacerbated. Oh my God, Spike! This is madness. People around went berserk. Someone bashed their head into the wall and went unconscious, and others were shouting and screaming, and there's a lot of blood on the floor. Biff and Logan went outside to check what's going on, but they haven't returned yet. I've locked myself in the classroom waiting for the police, but no one is coming.